Ahoy, fellow Vulcan minds.
And welcome aboard the Joy of Trek, a bird-brained podcast exploring the time vortex and deserts of Star Trek, all of it. I'm Cocky.
I'm Kay.
And being forgotten by Cocky is your chief engineer, Greg.
Together we're on a mission through the tentacle plants of Star Trek to find the maturity ritual in every child and the excellence in every episode.
Even the disappointed mothers.
Because every episode must be someone's favorite, and it might as well be us.
So beat up your childhood bullies and join us as we neck pinch into the Joy of Trek.
Well.
Okay, we're back to the animated series.
Yes, we are.
I've been so looking forward to that, even though we made the little joke last time that the next time that we do an animated series because you get totally blazed out of our gourds. We did not do that.
No, we did not, because we didn't know that it was well, I didn't know that because I didn't really do a lot of checking in on this episode until this morning. So
yeah. And also, I'm really glad that we didn't because this is a pretty amazing episode.
Right, we are actually far out of our comfort zone with this episode because it's generally a beloved one. Right.
And for the listeners at home, we're talking about
the original series.
Your boyfriend asked. What show are we watching? TAS, the original series.
Season 1, episode 2, Yesteryear.
First aired on September 15, 1973, during the drought.
When in 1973 was that?
September?
September.
It usually comes toward the end of 1973.
Right. So that was just before I was born. Then. Okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Also starring the voice of James Doohan, and James Doohan.
Yeah, I wonder if he got paid more than the other actors, or, probably less, and he made up in volume.
I guess.
Yes, he played 7 roles in this episode.
Yeah, something like that. But yes, like I said, it seems to be a generally quite well-beloved episode.
Oh, yeah. Written by DC Fontana, technically showrunner of the animated series, but Dorothy, as she went by, women in science fiction.
Friend of Dorothy?
No, are you a friend of Dorothy? Ooh, we have to find out. Do you know that was actually a sort of witch hunt in the armed forces?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Project
they were
Dorothy.
Trying to find out who the frell this Dorothy was.
Because for those at home, a friend of Dorothy was a euphemism for a gay person.
Yes.
As in Dorothy Gale, because the actress had become quite a gay icon at some point. And through various layers of misunderstanding, there was a belief that there was an actual sort of Dorothy ringleader that was turning soldiers gay. I once hung out with a person that I knew from the furry writing community, older gentleman like us, who claimed to have, prior to the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, was the sort of gay finder general for a particular branch of the military, which a role that a gay gentleman you'd think was particularly suited for.
Right.
But during those 4 years, he did not
He got laid a lot, but he didn't find any gays.
Exactly. In his words, I didn't officially identify a single gay soldier, but I was absolutely drowning in.
Yeah. Anyway.
And during this episode, do you want to do the synopsis?
Someone else called it Old Yeller Vulcan style.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Hey, did we say the name? Yesteryear. We said it,
yes,
right?
Yesteryear.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, yes. Spock has to go back in time to save himself.
Oh, hang on. That misses some critical, that's just sort of flavor. Really, it's an examination of his evolution from a confused child to the Vulcan man that he became. To the point where all the sort of unnecessary exposition is handled really, really quickly.
I know.
And waved away.
One of my first notes is there's an unusual high information density in the first minute of this episode.
Yep. And then you get to the important part, which is this really slow, emotional investigation.
Right. Also, I finally figured out where Shatner got his reputation for speaking like
in that
this
staccato
comes from. But it's it's in the opening season. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
Okay.
I just noticed how long that pause was there in watching this.
Oh, I think he talked about once having spoken with, an actor of some note.
Yeah.
I think he was involved in the original War of the Worlds. We definitely know him. Who said that, if you want to be memorable, you have to have a recognizable speech pattern. And he took that to heart.
Yeah. Oh, that's
purely apocryphal.
Yeah. Let's see. So what have we got here? So yes, the reviews were rather mixed on this episode. CBR ranked it its 4th best of all time travel episodes. Nerdlist ranked it the 9th best time travel episode. So there's definitely a little bit of disagreement on how well this ranks on time travel episodes.
Not having seen those lists, but like as a time travel episode...
I was just being facetious here, really.
Oh, well, I mean, it's not a great time travel story.
Oh, no.
It's a great story that has to use time travel.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But it's not like, All You Zombies, with its layers and layers of...
All You Zombies?
Ooh, you might know it as the film Transcendence.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Ooh, you should see it. It
Okay.
has an absolutely amazing performance by... Ooh, Suki... Chief, who was the actress?
Kaki, a little bit confused there. So you're thinking of the movie Predestination with Ethan Hawke and Sarah Snook. Really fantastic movie. You got confused it with the Johnny Depp movie Transcendence, directed by Wally Pfister.
Thank you. This was recommended to us by Royce Day.
Hi, I'm Royce Day, and I live in the United States in the state of Maryland, and I love writing furry-inspired science fiction in the same hope-punk vein as Star Trek, some of which has been graced by Kaki's dulcet tones on his other podcast, The Voice of Dog.
Well, modesty prevents me, but...
Yesteryear is probably the most well-known episodes of the animated series, not only because it gives us a direct look at Spock's awful childhood and Sarek's awful parenting, but also because in 25 minutes it gives us a surprisingly dramatic and emotionally deep story, which was incredibly unusual for a Saturday morning cartoon in the 1970s. As a geeky, socially awkward kid myself, it hit me hard when I saw it as a child, and its lessons of accepting loss and choosing your own path still resonate today.
Oh, thank you for that recommendation.
That's really excellent.
Yes. Speaking of Sarek, he's a bit of a job hopper, isn't he? Like 17 ambassadorial positions in 30 years? That's like every 2 years. That seems like a very high turnover rate.
Oh, I really want to talk about that with you, but let's do that when it comes up in the episode, okay? Yeah, because sure. I caught that as well. So shall we dive into the episode?
Right, let's, yes.
Okay.
Let's see.
Lock S foils in attack position.
That's Voyager. Voy, I should say.
Voy,
it saves
yes.
so much time.
Yes, and we are Joy.
Good point,
in all
yes.
caps.
Let's see. Well, actually, we didn't, but I don't think I have any warp cores.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've sort of got one. Yeah,
okay,
we've totally
go for
sort
it.
of got one.
I say we eject the warp core.
So the Federation just has a time travel device that they're using all the time?
Actually, yes, I have that one listed as a potential warp core as
okay,
well.
now, I mean, we definitely need to say that.
Like, how is that portal not massively restricted in, like, why is there not an entire armada of ships above this planet and have it, like, completely...
Exactly. And now that we've said that, we can move on. Because that, you know...
Also, speaking of the portal, is that, like, the same portal that they use in that crossover episode from...
No. That's,
okay.
That's a different one.
Right.
It's the Guardian of Forever, which also occurred in City on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins in the original series, and would later reappear in Terra Firma, spoilers, Part 2 of Discovery's Season 3. Did I get that right, Chief?
Yep, Kaki, you're spot on there. It's Discovery Season 3, Terra Firma Part 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's not the one that we saw in the Lower Decks versus Strange New Worlds crossover.
Alas, no. Which was its own thing, in the words of the Skeleton Dancers, along with David S. Pumpkins.
Fair enough. I'm just like showing my lack of Star Trek lore here.
I mean, this was still the Gene Roddenberry era when there would just be convenient like portals that do terrible things in order to enable particular stories that the writers wanted to tell. Which is, I guess, why City on the Edge Forever, very, very famous episode. And I guess Dorothy Fontana like rightly assumed that anyone who's watching Star Trek the Animated Series will either immediately recognize it or not care.
Fair. Yeah.
There's nobody who's going to be in between. So we can just have this magenta-streaked Bride of Chaotica, who's one of the scientists, and Big Bird.
Oh, yes.
Yellow Big Bird.
It's a cool character. It the bird thing has like one line in the entire episode.
Yeah, and I think it's,
Well, no, it's not.
Gelflings.
I was going to say.
Ettons. He's an Aurelian. A character that was introduced and started the tradition of having avian characters only in animated series.
Because it's cheaper in animated series. I mean, it's like very easy and cheap to do in an animated series, but massively expensive and difficult to get right in a live series.
And that was Roddenberry's mandate. Hey, we're writing for animation now.
Let's do weird shit.
Yeah. It's as cheap to draw a city as it is to draw a room, as opposed to in set design.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alik is the character's name.
Sorry, An.
Alik Om.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Names derived from the script, not said on screen, but Alik Om would subsequently appear in a lot of fan fiction and novels because he's fantastic. He's a big bird scientist.
Yeah. Also, what I noticed about the portal is that you only see the portal on this side. You never see how people arrive or even or how they depart again, which is kind of interesting because on this side there's clearly a stone archway, which gets this weird color light effect when someone is arriving back or departing through it, it kind of operates on the same principle as the doors of the bridge on the Enterprise, which know exactly when someone is going for the turbo lift and not just walking up the ramp to go to their station. But that aside...
Except for, I think it's in Charades, the episode of Strange New Worlds. Amanda, Spock's mother, has just beamed on board, and Spock and her are having a bit of an awkward conversation. In the background, you see Captain Pike wanting to leave, but he walks up to the door and it doesn't open. And out of focus, you see him just looking up why isn't this, why am I being trapped in here?
Yes.
Leading me to believe that just like our hypothesis that all universal translators immediately become sentient and benevolent guards, there's also an entire sentient AI just managing all the doors.
Thank you for making a simple door very happy.
Oh, sick Hitchhiker's Guide reference there, bro.
But yes, think of this. This time portal, it allows you to go anywhere, anywhen.
Anywhere, yeah.
So what does it look like on the other side? And how long does it kick around for?
I guess it's quantum leap rules. You just sort of know.
I suppose. But yeah, also you arrive in your own body, rather than quantum leap where you are now occupying someone else.
Maybe it's just you arrive in a spot that no one's going to pass through. And you have to remember where it is and walk through it. And then you go through,
and then go
it's
back.
An invisible...
I wonder how many people it took them to get that figured out.
Well,
and how many timelines have been permanently changed because of it?
It helps that the Guardian talks.
True. Maybe it gives you instructions. Are you have you done this before? It's are you familiar with our concept?
Please follow the illuminated signs to your nearest exit.
Yes.
The desiccated corpse of the time traveler next to you may be used as a flotation device.
Oh yeah, this is Green Boots.
Oh no. A rather horrifying phenomenon related to
corpses on Mount Everest.
Yes. Corpses on Mount Everest and their use as signposts and campsites.
Yes, Green Boots was in a cave of sorts. So, yes.
The grim phenomenon where lives that have been claimed by Mount Everest, lives have been claimed, but corpses have generally not been reclaimed because it's extremely impractical.
There have been a few cleanup operations. Most of them involve shoving the corpses over a ridge so that they're not in clear view anymore.
Yeah.
Because
that's resulted in Rainbow Valley.
Well.
As you told me about, a valley strewn with corpses in various multicolored skiing outfits.
It's quite grim to think about, really.
It really is. But if you think about, if that's too grim, then think about Brian Blessed.
Oh.
Who wants to be the first person, I think, over 60 to make the Everest climb without oxygen.
Okay. Oof.
Yeah, which he tried twice. In one case, he had to turn back, I think, due to injury. And Brian Blessed is an amazing British actor. We know him as also a Birdman from Flash Gordon.
Oh, yes.
Gordon's alive!
Ah, yes. I am Brian Blessed.
Exactly. He walks into a room and just announces himself with such joy. He's also a Chief Boss Nass from Star Wars Episode 1. No, the first time that he went up, he wasn't injured. His climbing partner was injured, and homie climbed all the way down with his climbing partner on his back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's a big man, so...
He's a phenomenon.
I saw this kind of motivational poster once, which was a Mount Everest climber who was a double amputee. He still made the trek up, and it was something like, this man is a double amputee and he still made the trek up to the top of Mount Everest. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
And some commenter goes my feet hurt.
Oh no, that's awful. That's awful.
Anyway.
But I've understood that there's not a lot of climbing involved in Mount
Oh,
Everest.
no, it's like-
mostly
yeah.
like hiking and then
The
endurance.
only part which requires anything resembling mountaineering is Hillary's Step, which is just a little bit below the summit. And that's the only part where you actually have to use climbing ropes and do an actual bit of climbing. Most of the time it's just drudging up the mountain. I mean, there's the I want to say the Kombu Fall, I think it's called, the glacier part, which occasionally requires like climbing over ladders and stuff because they're just like glacier cracks that you have to get across. But yes,
The English pronunciation is glacier.
glacier.
Yeah, you're right in the middle between the English and the Dutch pronunciation, gletscher, which
Glacier, yeah, well.
I really like.
All right, so time portal. Let's get to this episode. We're like, how long?
No, we like immediately when we finished, you said, well, that was 25 minutes with very thin plot. Should only take us 2 or 3 hours to talk about that.
I know, right? We are now 20 minutes into the recording, and we are now finally starting the actual episode.
It's so efficient. Because from orbit, Kirk just says straight up,
Our mission is to assist a team of historians in the investigation of Federation history.
and out walks Kirk and speaks with the scientists,
Yeah.
and Bones is there.
And Spock arrives, and Bones is like,
Who's he, Jim?
yeah.
And everybody's just really cool about him bringing someone aboard.
Yeah, and because the first thing that Kirk does is like he flips open his communicator and says, Kirk to Enterprise, beam up.
Yeah. And then Scotty picks a random number of people out of the group that's
Yeah.
there because
I mean, that's hey, that's my pet peeve. That's my,
he knows to leave behind Alec and I don't know the streak-haired woman's name. She's fascinating in her magenta jumpsuit. Like, in very efficient dialogue, it's established that Spock is completely unknown to this crew,
Yes.
and that he has an Andorian for
first officer.
First officer.
Yes.
Well, I thought sure you'd know Thalen by now, Jim. He's been your first officer for 5 years.
Who is like, oh, who are you? Who's also very not territorial about the fact that, like, the captain seems to think that he's, like, this other guy is now his first officer.
Yeah.
Also not like, yeah, okay, clearly the captain is, like, not compos mentis enough to be arguing I relieve him of his position, any of that bullshit.
Well, unfortunately, he's not a Klingon.
Yeah, yes.
Who might reach for that conclusion quite well. Notice the pallid color of the Andorian.
He does look very greyish, yes.
Yeah. This was directed by Hal Sutherland, famously colorblind.
Oh, yes.
In
you
charge of
mentioned,
color
yeah.
selection. Yeah. Alas.
They do have this cool, like, four-sided TV on their meeting room table.
That's actually from the original series.
Yeah.
It's 4 or 3-sided, I'm not entirely sure. Hey, but speaking of that Andorian,
Yeah.
I thought it was like a really good performance on the part of the actor, because you're right that he didn't seem territorial, but I felt like he was he felt that impulse and was restraining himself.
Oh, yeah.
And like letting out the better part of himself.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like clear. I mean, he's a Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
They're used to weird shit happening, unless that only happens on the Enterprise. But even then, he's like on the Enterprise, so he's used to weird shit happening.
Yes, exactly. And the same weird shit has been happening in the original series. And on that display in the middle of the conference table appears a very sad-looking gentleman.
I know, right?
He looks so...
He looks a bit like. He looks like a little bit like Brian now.
Yes, he's
you say?
an ancestor of O'Brien.
I know, right?
Yeah.
He totally looks like O'Brien.
And this young ensign or lieutenant or whatever has been tasked with figuring out, like, who is Spock in this timeline.
There is no Vulcan named Spock serving with the Starfleet in any capacity.
Okay, so then the family tree. It's Thaman and Spock who ask about this. They're very cool and very direct.
Sarek the Vulcan, ambassador to 17 Federation planets in the past 30 years.
Yeah.
And Spock says, F off. You're an idiot. Sammy O'Brien, go back home and shame your family in private.
What of Sarek's family, his wife and son?
Amanda, wife of Sarek, born on Earth as Amanda Grayson. The couple separated after the death of their son.
No, wait. Who's also called Grayson? Is that
What?
Robin? Is he called Grayson?
Yes, Dick Grayson from,
right,
from
yeah.
Batman
Yeah, exactly.
and Robin fame.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, new headcanon.
Pause the podcast. No, I'm gonna need this. Where's your little brain going?
Oh, it's just like
a fun little journey.
some weird like distant relationship, you know, that like she's a descendant of Robin who Then again that would like I mean, I guess it makes him bisexual rather than gay, which he totally should be, but
Oh yeah, yeah, no.
yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, so yeah, we both cotton on to the fact he's been ambassador to 17 planets in 30 years. That seems like a bit of a job hopper. That combined with the fact that he separated from his wife after the death of their son, and that, you know, his ex-wife then subsequently died in a shuttle accident.
Yes.
I think that man was a hugely depressed emotional wreck for decades following the death of his son.
Yes.
And that he, like, just in those lines, I immediately picture someone who's just lost himself in work, and every time that the depression and alcoholism catches up with him, he looks for another posting, and he's constantly like outrunning this pain that he's never escaped.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, like, I can either go charitable or I can go mean.
I did the charitable one. You can do the other one. It's okay.
Oh, well, it's like basically whenever the latest Me Too scandal catches up with him,
Oh,
he's
no!
moved against...
Oh, no!
Well, you did ask for it.
No, but I mean, I'm upset because it's so accurate.
I mean, the charitable one would be that he's just like he's a crisis diplomat. So, like, they send him to a planet when there's a problem that needs to be immediately solved.
Those people don't get called ambassadors, do they?
I mean, it depends.
They go, oh,
Yeah,
I
guess
actually
like
don't know.
they send like, okay, we have a problem with this planet. We need like our troubleshooter there. We're going to send Ambassador Spock there to like solve this problem. And like 2 years later, after everything's been calmed down, and like we can get someone less. We can more long term in place rather than our crisis manager.
Yeah, exactly. You can send the USS Cerritos A
Right.
for second contact and cleanup.
There you go.
Yeah, Sarek is a huge slut, though, isn't he?
I guess.
I mean, he gets around.
I mean, is there any indication that he does?
He has an awful lot of secret children.
Right. I mean, that's a good point. Like the old Jellar Vulcan style was commented by someone called Pete, and someone called Kyle said, why didn't we see Michael Berman in this episode?
Yeah, good point.
Well...
That's a really good point. She might have...
already been at boarding school?
Well, okay, I don't know about that, but... She's definitely in the household, both as a child when Spock is younger.
Right. I was who's the older one of the two?
Michael is older.
Michael's older, yeah.
Michael's older than... but yeah, he was really struggling at that time. And her attempt to escape was also a significant factor in his decision to reject emotion. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant how in various properties, like Spock's childhood is explored, probably starting with this, and just the difficulties that he faced. And in Discovery, it was established that he had dyslexia.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely uncommon in Vulcans, and just like a normal human condition that people need some educational assistance
Very
with.
familiar with it.
Right. Adding to the stigma that he experienced.
But yes, they quickly conclude that...
Was the Guardian in use while we were gone?
Yes, but it was nothing unusual. We were scanning recent Vulcan history.
Therefore, the timeline changed. And he remembers, like, oh, wait, yes, I did have this weird uncle showing up who saved me in the desert.
Yeah.
And was like, wait a minute. And like, and I think it's Kirk who says, like,
did Sarek look like you do now?
And Spock goes, I know what you were thinking, sir. And like, they're just straight up with like, yep, we've been through about 40 of these adventures by now. This is probably how it's going. And I love that.
They're very genre aware. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. They're talking to, on the one hand, kids watching Saturday morning cartoons like Royce, and they're also talking to those Star Trek fans who put aside their disdain for animation and chose to embrace the animated series as the continuation that they'd hoped for from their favorite science fiction show. So everyone would be aware.
Yeah, very good point. So they're back on the planet and talking to Miss Magenta, and like, okay, what happened? Like, were you doing anything? Was the Guardian in use for anything? And like, oh yeah, we were scanning recent Vulcan history, and that apparently caused the time thing to change because Spock was away during that period of time, so therefore he could not be in the historical records or something.
All right. I think we're supposed to get from this is what's being stated, that in the original timeline of the universe, Spock would have been on the planet while the historians were scanning history, would see his young self in danger and jump in to save himself. And that's the ontological loop.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
But because, for whatever reason, he'd gone to Orion with Jim to look at some of maybe to investigate, like, piercings.
Yeah.
They like that in Orion. He wasn't able to see that. And so he didn't, like, save his own grandfather, essentially, the grandfather paradox, as he was supposed to. And now he has to correct that. Which is kind of brilliant inversion or subversion of time travel tropes. It wasn't an action that altered the past, it was an inaction.
Yeah.
He was supposed
Very
to
good
interfere.
Okay, so here's like another little weird thing that is suddenly jumping out at me. It's like we have our bird brain scientist.
Alikom, yep.
Yes, who actually says, like...
The boy is recorded as dying during the maturity test.
He says maturity test.
Yes,
I
but
like
that's
the
actually not what happens. Because, like, the incident, as Spock later remembers, didn't happen during the maturity test. It happened a month earlier.
Yes, I caught that as well. But I think the important incident is the change in Spock's heart. Because the next thing we see is, this maturity test is a big deal. Spock actually goes out across the desert early to practice for it.
Right.
And that's when the incident happens that Spock has to help. In the original timeline, the same incident would have happened and he would have returned. He would have survived that. But he would have still been in emotional turmoil. So when the actual maturity test happened at the end of the month, he wouldn't survive it because he wasn't emotionally ready for it.
Okay, yeah, I can accept that. That's a good way to describe it. So yes, he orders some equipment. He asked for a Vulcan still suit and some other equipment that...
It's really practical.
Yeah.
And he specifies the era that he needs some casual clothes as well and a carrying bag also from the same era.
Which also implies that, like, Vulcan has a pretty hopping fashion industry with frequent changes in...
Which I love. I absolutely love it. Like this stitching is clearly anachronistic.
Yeah. Come on, I'm sure that our chief engineer has a few things to say about authenticity in outfits.
Chief, the Enterprise canonically has a wardrobe department. Can you imagine that? How cool is that?
Lower Decks absolutely needs to just have someone somewhere just like sewing period accurate costumes, just complaining the entire time about like, why do we need to have this period accurate stuff for you guys? What's going on here? Leave me alone. I love this. I need this to be on screen in some capacity. Come on, Star Trek, please.
And we get a brief interaction with Thaman.
This change in the timeline will put you in my place. Yet I'm not aggrieved.
Andorians are not known for their charity.
True.
And the Andorian says, well, as a warrior race, we are not usually given to sympathy, but one we do have is for family.
Yeah, and that's a valid thing.
Yeah. Your family was devastated by your childhood death. So restoring that is totally worth the sacrifice of my career. I think about that sometimes. Starfleet officers are shown as they would be completely willing to sacrifice their life to save someone else as part of their service.
Yeah.
I thought about that recently. We've been rewatching, my husband and I, Deep Space Nine, and we got to season 7, where we're introduced to Ezri Dax, the new host of the Dax symbiont.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten this about her. She was an unjoined Trill who never expected to be joined. She was just an officer serving aboard the ship that was transporting the symbiont. Symbiont took a turn for the worst, needed a host toot sweet, and she offered herself, thereby like significantly altering her personhood.
Yeah.
She gave up being Ezri in order to become Ezri Dax, essentially like death of personality almost.
Yeah.
And that is a sacrifice that a Starfleet officer would make for a dying person.
Yeah. Very, very true. He asks for like a whole bunch of equipment and he basically gets a bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The equipment is in the bag. We don't see him stripping down into his Starfleet issue skivvies and dressing as really he ought to.
Sure.
He brings his uniform with him and keeps it in the bag while he's traveling.
We do get to see a much younger Spock in little more than skivvies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Vulcan school uniforms in the year 8857. Oh, just, okay, particular choices.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just on the swim team and they've all won prizes or something.
Oh, that could be, yeah. Because they wear these briefs and a sash and he witnesses...
And boots.
And boots. Well, yes. I mean, you've got to wear boots.
It's a cool outfit, actually. I kind of dig it.
Earther, barbarian, emotional Earther. You're a Tyran, Spock. You could never be a true Vulcan.
Of course it reminded me, because it was a direct reference. The bullying scene in Star Trek 2009, the J.J. Abrams film, was largely lifted from here, except that the beating that he tries to give one of his bullies is significantly more severe. Yes, this takes place on the Vulcan city of Shikar. S-H-I-R-K-A-H-R, but it's the R is apparently silent. Ooh. Now, here's something difficult. See these reefs?
Yes.
Where we see a hill where Spock climbs up, and we see a pretty large heavenly body behind him.
Yeah.
And then he looks down over this valley in front of him, and on the horizon is another pretty large heavenly body.
Oh, yes. Good
After
point.
Spock has said...
Vulcan has no moon, Miss Uhura.
I'm not surprised, Mr. Spock.
Yes, I believe there was actually a specific artistic instruction, no moon.
Yep.
And they went and put it in anyway.
It had already been drawn, and when the sketches came in, Gene and Dorothy indeed wrote "no moon" really big, and it just didn't arrive. This was also like, despite the fact that Dorothy Fontana was the showrunner, she didn't get to see the completed episodes until they aired.
Oh.
Because that's just how Hollywood kind of was.
Okay.
You don't, like, it would be really abnormal to invite a woman to, you know, a review meeting when she's not there serving coffee, even though she's technically in charge of the episodes that you're producing.
Also, technically, there should be 2 moons here, because like in that one shot, he's like framed by the moon.
Exactly.
Which is like apparently massive.
And before
because
him,
like you can only get a moon that big if you use a really long telelens, and you can't do that when you're like doing an upshot at someone. So.
Yep. Do you want to talk about the whatever shield limit?
No, I don't.
Oh, come on!
We've already covered that in a previous episode.
And orbital mechanics, and yes, there's a certain maximum size of which an orbiting body can appear from the surface of a heavenly body
before it gets ripped apart by. But yes, and then in the next shot, there's like the moon is suddenly on the other side of the city instead of behind him. But
it's
never
a
mind.
gorgeous city. I don't know. It looks like it's enclosed by a ring, by a raised ring,
by a shield wall.
Yeah. These planes that are presumably like fields or something.
Yeah.
Super duper, like Jetsons. Oh, no. This architecture reminded me of right under the Eiffel Tower in Paris.
Oh.
Right?
Never been there,
plane.
but yeah.
Oh, it's delightful. It's enclosed now as a,
security area.
Yeah, for security, so people can enjoy themselves there. In a more innocent time, I had the pleasure of walking through there when it was just open, and so we see this beautiful like cityscape. There's crystals and domes and these arches like the Eiffel Tower, and we see Spock at a window regarding his younger self being bullied by the rest of the swim team. It looks like.
Wow. Yes.
I mean. This is like a scene from that anime with the swim team kids. What was it? Yuri on Ice? No, it wouldn't be.
I know
Ice
which one you're talking about, and
swimming.
that was distinctly animated in a very different style, and
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Is that an anime for grown-ups?
No.
Is that a swim team anime?
No, it's not a grown-up, but they are like, there are a lot of pretty boys on that swim team.
Yeah, all right.
Let's just call it like that.
Yeah. I'll be in my bunk kind of... Like, it's perfectly fine, and it's probably a really good anime, but we will be in our bunks.
It's actually a hilarious story, because like that was just a portfolio reel that they made.
Oh,
An
wow.
animation studio went, and everybody who saw it went like, oh my God, I want to see this anime. And then we had like, okay, I guess we now got an order for an anime that we didn't actually plan, just based on...
Okay, now, what should we name these characters? And what do you
exactly.
think
And
about?
then they had to like make up an entire
amazing.
storyline. This was just a showcase of what their studio is capable of doing. And...
Oh, that's an awesome origin story. It sort of reminded me of the origin story of the Western comedy animation series Samurai Pizza Cats.
Oh, yes.
Which is where a Western studio had bought, I think, a Korean children's program in order to dub them in English and release it there. Except, like, the tapes had arrived from Korea, but, like, their translator had left. And they didn't really have anything to do while they were still
find
hiring
another Korean person, a Korean-speaking person.
So time was tight. They already had the animation team who were being paid by the day to just hang out while Korean translator was being sold, because they also had to like write comedy and you have to be a television writer and a translator.
Yeah.
And so while waiting, the animation team kind of hung out in their little dingy studio and started playing these Korean cartoons. Like, what do you think is happening?
And they just made up an entirely new story about like...
And they were having such a good time that they cancelled the hiring of a translator. Let's just make up our own thing.
Yeah.
It's like rockets come out of my head. And it's brilliant. Samurai Pizza Cats.
I do remember watching it and being quite entertained by it. I'm not sure how well it holds up, but...
Oh, let's not find out.
Yeah, good point.
Childhood must be protected, as is the theme of this episode. How do you like my transitional material?
Yes, very good segue.
Thank you.
My apologies, visitor. I regret you are witness to that unfortunate display of emotion on the part of my son.
He's pretty critical of his child.
Yes.
But the tone of voice is not just like calm and placid.
Yeah.
But it's also quite reasonable within the context of his culture. He believes that he's being perfectly reasonable.
Yes.
Which I think is a really... It adds a brilliant layer of drama to this. Sarek's not a bad guy. but he is mistreating his child.
Oh, yes.
Who has needs that he's not facilitating it.
Also, one little comment here. Spock is like, when he greets his father, he is like, live long and prosper, Sarek of Vulcan. It's like,
yeah.
Welcome to my house, Kaki of Earth. You know, it's like,
oh yeah, it's the Vulcan part that's really
why is that?
Oh, it's a title because he's headcanon because he's an ambassador.
But even then,
but maybe this is how you indicate an ambassador, in the same way that you would call someone like Healer Sarek if you were speaking like your title.
Okay, yeah.
If you call someone Sarek of Vulcan, it's implied that it's ambassador Vulcan.
It's just kind of weird, like, one Vulcan on Vulcan to another Vulcan going like, hi, hello, Vulcan of Vulcan.
Yeah. You'd think that your city is much more important.
Right.
Spock's response, grown-up Spock's response, is really interesting.
In the family, all is silence. No more will be said of it.
That seems like a healthy family dynamic.
Oh, totally, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like, we don't speak of family matters. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, that's a recipe for abuse, basically.
Yes! It really...
If we want a warp core dump, I mean, that would be...
Actually, yeah, let's do that one, because that's...
I say we eject the warp core!
That's a really unhealthy family dynamic. Like, just won't talk about it. We'll dump it all down. Oh, okay. In a way, this reminds me of a present that I've got from you, which is for you, which is unrelated. I had it in my bag last time and I completely forgot about it, so I'm not going to do that. And I'll tell you what the connection is there. I have a book that was sent to us by Crimson, who studies the Blade, who sent us a copy of...
Star Trek, Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, written and illustrated by Shane Johnson, based upon the engineering logs of Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott.
It's brilliant. It came out in
includes material from
1987.
Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Oh, this is fantastic.
And it's written like from the perspective of Scotty. I think it even uses like set blueprints that have been repurposed and all these sketches.
A rat suit, anti-radiation garments.
Yep, as appeared in...
the warp engine room. Oh, wow.
In the first and second films, I think.
Air-controlled staging area. Fantastic.
Oh, I had this as a child, so thank you, Crimson.
Tricorder. Oh, wow. It's like, it's basically designs of different rooms, what they look like.
What they're for, and his personal observations.
Commander, can you explain to us? But it's like in the manual, it says on page 17 that there's a corridor connection.
Sick Galaxy Quest reference, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Crimson, for this amazing book. Kay, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I'm definitely going to have a good browse through that and see what I can learn, the new things I can learn about the Enterprise.
Oh, yeah. Actually, you might be able to tell me a few things once you brush up on this. So this came to my mind because we were talking about, in the family, all is silence and that being very unhealthy. So Shane Johnson is now Laura Johnson. She came out as trans in 2008. She had a storied career, which started with this book. She did the Star Wars technical novel. She did several novels. She won either a Christie or a Christie. I don't know entirely sure. Okay. It's the Chief Award for Christian Literature, where she also had a significant career. But the problems that she experienced with gender dysphoria as a trans person who was not out and felt that she had to restrain her identity and pretend to be the male that people expected her to be from childhood, was seriously affecting her health and deteriorating to that point that finally, when she made the decision to transition, she was unfortunately rejected by a lot of people in her life. Very difficult,
that's always a shame.
She's hopefully now flourishing as Laura, but so that sadly came to mind as a case where unhealthy family dynamics are very unhealthy for people who have needs that don't fit with the expectations of
the family.
Yeah.
Well, which we see a little bit more of here as well, because Spock has returned home, and he is cuddling with his I Ching bear.
Yes. Sick. A reference to... How would you describe the I Ching?
Oh, it's like, I guess...
It's a Buddhist, manual?
It's more like, it's more like... it's not really astrology, but it's like... It's kind of like a...
there is an aspect of tarot.
Yes, more like that. It's more like horoscopy like things. Yeah.
Symbology is, I think, actually...
Right, that's a good point, yeah.
You're quite right, by the way, because this creature should have been called Ichaya.
Right.
Which is what everyone else on the show called it. But here's a little fun bit. The child actor who was cast as Spock was called in for an audition and while normally at an audition, he was already quite a familiar child actor, you receive like one scene that you run through with someone several times.
Yeah.
And to his great confusion, he was given like 17 pages of text to read, and there was nobody reading back to him.
Oh.
So he thought it was a really, really unusual audition.
Yes.
And the director, Hal Sutherland, I think, was there present, who thought that he was doing the recording for this role.
Oh.
So this is a single take that child actor did. And then later it was realized, like when this was edited in, Ichaya is the wrong pronunciation. It would be more expensive to fly that child over again than to have all the rest of the cast redo their lines where they said Ichaya.
Oh, okay. I noticed that the subtitles occasionally says Ichaya and Elchaya.
Yes. Our technology is a little bit limited, and subtitles are printed visually, like they're printed as images on DVDs where we've derived our technology from, and so those get converted to text via optical character recognition with sometimes mistakes. A capital I for a lowercase L.
Right, yes. And then prints it as an uppercase L. But
yes, because capitalization also gets corrected and all sorts of mistakes are introduced and made. We have an interaction between young Spock and Sarek.
Yes.
The time draws near when you will have to decide whether you will follow Vulcan or human philosophy.
It's incredible how this scene can be read two very, very distinct ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like a stern father who's demanding something of his child that his child is struggling with and not providing him with any tools to do so. Or, alternatively, a supportive father who says, well, you have a choice to make and it is yours to make.
Mm-hmm.
Look, one of the outcomes would be hugely disappointing to me, if you chose not to follow the Vulcan way. But I'm not letting my personal bias or preference weigh in.
Yes. Except even in that positive reading, I still feel a lot of it like, but I would be terribly disappointed if you chose the human side, and therefore I'm pressuring you into doing it, into making the choice I want you to make.
From the J.J. Abrams film where Sarek was portrayed much more sympathetically.
Yeah.
Because like there he has a similar dialogue with his bloody-nosed son who's sitting in the detention office.
You are fully capable of deciding your own destiny. The question you face is, which path will you choose? This is something only you can decide.
Which kind of like delays the fact that he has to make this choice here. More like he has to make that choice again and again and again.
Spock meets his mother, Amanda.
I was going to say, I was much more charmed by that interaction.
Yeah.
Where basically Spock is trying to, like, not to be too obvious, but she obviously has concerns.
Any child has much to learn. My young cousin has a more difficult road to travel than others.
So, yes, I found that scene much more charming than the interaction between young Spock and his father.
Prior to the modern era of Star Trek, like the relationship between Spock and his mother was fascinating to very many and like portrayed on screen excellently with delicacy and nuance and a lot going unsaid. Even in this animation, like at the very end, there is a heartbreaking moment where a character just sort of lids their eyes. Amanda lids her eyes when Spock says he chooses the Vulcan way of life. And like there's so much going on there. She's proud of her son for choosing something. She feels rejected by him and she wants not to. Yeah. Like all of that just from 4 frames of animation.
This is also where Spock learns that, hey, things are not quite the way he remembers them.
The boy goes through the Cos-1 ordeal soon, does he not?
Next month.
But tomorrow is the 20th day of Tasmin.
Yes. Is something wrong?
I've lost track of time, he says, and covers his mouth with his hand. That gesture that Filmation used.
Yes. Although it's more famous for the one you see more often is one where Kirk does that exactly same gesture.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
It's a little gasp of surprise. We get a brief explanation for the benefit of the watchers, what this whole ordeal is about. It's interesting that they actually call it an ordeal rather than a test.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 days without food or water. I mean, most people don't survive that. I think most humans can't.
Well, you're supposed to find your own.
Oh, good point, yes.
Right?
I guess
survival skills.
It's more like you're not allowed to have it. It's more like you're not given any.
Yeah,
fair
nor
enough.
weapons for that matter.
Because apparently Vulcan is still quite a dangerous place, as we learned later.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that the place is called Vulcan's Forge.
Right.
And there's 2 ways to read that. Like the forge that is on the planet Vulcan, or the place where Vulcans are forged.
Oh, yes, very good point.
You know,
I was actually thinking about the whole Vulcan thing because, Vulcan is a Greek god, I believe. Is it
Roman.
Is it Roman? Okay,
Yeah.
What did the Greeks call them? Because the Roman and the Greek pantheon are almost identical, except they've just renamed them. But yeah, so Vulcan.
Yeah.
Which was, I believe there was also the Mercury before was also sometimes referred to as Vulcan, I think. Because it was, or was that the mysterious missing planet which was supposed to be opposite from the Earth towards the sun at all times, so you can never see it. Something
Why
like that.
are you asking me things
that
I don't know?
Oh, maybe I'm giving the Chief an opportunity to jump in here. And
Chief, do you know what the Kay's talking about?
All right, Kay. The Roman god Vulcan has a Greek counterpart, Hephaestus, of the god of forgery and volcanoes and stuff like that. As far as the Planet X thing, that's a theoretical planet that's thought to exist, and as of a couple of days ago, there's some mathematical proofs that show it's very likely that it could exist, and it orbits the sun once every 10,000 to 20,000 years. It hasn't been directly observed, so we don't really think it's there, but there's evidence mathematically that shows it probably is there. We just haven't directly observed it yet because of how long it takes to, orbit. So that's really interesting, Kay. So thank you for teaching me something.
Can't wait to hear it.
Of course he does, yes.
Can't wait to hear it. And apparently, Kay, neither can you.
But yeah, so I was so is that just a universal translator thing that they call them Vulcans? It's just how it gets translated into English?
Yeah, who knows?
Because we've got an obvious analogy here, so let's just call them like that. Because hot planet with dangerous thing and a weird obsession with blacksmithery, so let's just call them Vulcans.
Well, and that's how we also get Romulans.
Yeah, good point. Yes,
right,
yeah.
and its sister planet Remus.
Yes. Funny how that is cultural divide, but
it's just the translator. I think you're right.
It must be a universal translator thing. But yeah,
I was reminded of the Hindu Kush, a particular mountain passage, which I don't know exactly where it is, but as it was explained to me, the meaning of Hindu Kush is place where Hindus die because it's very dangerous.
Oh yeah,
so Vulcan's Forge. That's where
Vulcans are forged. Yeah,
yeah, and it's something that is not unusual to fail. But for a half-human, it would be a shame that would remain with him.
Right, yes.
I do not expect you to fail.
What if I do, Father?
There is no need to ask that question. You will not disappoint me. Not if your heart and spirit are Vulcan.
What the
go, yes.
Sarek!
More very healthy parenting behavior.
Because Sarek, I think he's being reassuring.
He thinks he is.
I believe in you, and so you should believe in yourself as well. And that will carry you through.
Yeah.
But this is terrible. That's not what this child needs.
No. Who instead goes to Ichaya, he has a cuddle with a saber-toothed bear or whatever it is.
Oh, he's so adorable.
He is.
The appearance was actually derived from the Salat had been mentioned. That's the species. Yeah. Spock has mentioned having a Salat, which is like a saber-toothed bear. Yeah. But its appearance was further discussed, and I think even illustrated in the fanzine Spockanalia.
Okay.
In the 70s, one of the many very saucy. I think Spockanalia is where Slashfic originated.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The first Spock / Kirk.
Yeah.
And that term didn't exist before.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the name Slashfic comes from, because there's a slash in between the two names.
Well, welcome. You were today years old when you discovered that.
Okay. One of those, phrases that you hear a lot and then suddenly...
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and for those who are listening who are unaware, Slashfic means sort of romantic fan fiction with same-sex pairings of characters from popular...
Rom-com fanfics.
They don't have to be rom or com, as long as they're slash.
Very good point. Spock is having a little reminiscing, trying to piece things together.
In this truly palatial home that has a domed edifice with a gigantic
massively
fountain.
Weird fountain with multiple spouts and things.
And they look like plant pots with found object art. I don't know if these are supposed to be plants or works of art, but they have all these rectangular, irregular patterns.
Young Spock decides to go out on his own pre-test.
Now, Kay.
Yeah.
What do you think pre-test means?
Oh.
Do you think that word existed before your brain? I love it. Kay, you're amazing. So Spock runs out on his own pretest. Do you not even want to like take a stand?
I would, but it's going into very strange places, which I don't want to expose our listeners to.
Oh, wait! Sorry. I thought you meant like he goes out on his own recognizance, but you mean like the test that he does before the actual test.
Right.
I am so sorry. Okay? I thought it was another one of those like hit it on things where...
No, it was actually...
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And you're completely right not to explain it further. Thank you very much.
Yes, he sneaks off, tells Ichaya not to follow him, which he does anyway. I'm assuming that Ichaya is a he, but...
Yeah. And he's such a... Like, he negs Ichaya so badly.
Yeah.
Like,
you are too old and too fat for this.
Like, Spock. You could have started a little lower.
Oh, come on. It's like, you know, you can say the most awful things to your pet as long as you say it in a sweet and affectionate way.
That is true. You say, as you're looking up at the little bundle of mischief hanging in her little hammock.
Who is like being very well behaved. You can just like, if I look off to my right here, I can just see this little paw with a couple of beans sticking out over the edge of a hammock, and it's.
Oh, she's been really good.
I guess she's learned that, like, if she like bothers us while we're podcasting, she gets put in detention.
Yes.
So she is definitely more like having a little snooze in her little hammock up there.
We'll give her a good playing with after we're done as a reward.
Yes.
So Amanda goes to Sarek. Hey, our child's missing, and so's that guy you said was that cousin that nobody knew about. Should we be...
Also, okay, let's another moment. It's like, oh yes, I am your long lost cousin from like whatever. You know, like we are closely related through Grandpa. What's his face?
From Mike and Charlene.
And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, come into our house.
Come into our house.
Yeah.
What the f***? Your relatives are public record. Why don't you call Mike and Charlene? Hey, there's someone here.
You don't think he'd harm Spock?
I don't know, Amanda. I will notify the authorities and ask them to initiate a search.
Young Spock is now being assaulted by Battlecat.
Yeah, Battlecat is exactly what I was looking for. I'm so glad you said it. It's this feline, demonic, reptilian-looking thing with huge ears. It's green and yellow, like the Super Saiyan form of Cringer from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I'm mixing my metaphors here. That's a Lamacha, is the species.
The cat from Lamacha.
And young Spock, he's in a spot of trouble because it's a terrible predator who comes roaring at him, roaring like Godzilla.
Oh, is that the same soundbite?
Let's hear it. That's Godzilla's roar. It's fat old Ichaya who comes to the rescue. Wrestling and fighting with this terrible beast, old Spock runs up and does a very successful double-handed neck pinch.
Double neck pinch, yes. Knocking out the predator.
Yep.
Young Spock immediately goes like, Ichaya, good boy, very well done. It's like no word of thanks to Spock.
A lot of confusion
Right,
there.
yes.
He sure is interested in the neck pinch.
Do you think I'll ever be able to do that neck pinch as well as you?
I dare say you will.
While old Spock leads young Spock away to safety. And notice, by the way, old Spock is still wearing his Starfleet uniform under his...
Yes, I noticed that.
Got a little bit of a peek of the black collar.
Yes.
And, is that the smartest idea if you're not trying to contaminate the time stream?
You should know that presumably that was designed later, so nobody should have known what it looks like.
Good one.
Yeah, I mean, considering the frequency that Starfleet changes their uniforms with.
I mean, sometimes...
Whenever it's
and then there's a huge gap between like Star Trek The Undiscovered Country and Picard going to the Academy, like a full century where they wear the monster maroons. Oh, but not the collars. You know those turtlenecks? Because those turtlenecks had degraded over time in wardrobe and just, okay, then we'll just not have
take them off and,
You followed me. Why?
I suspected you would go.
And he opens up to this family figure in a way that he can't to his parents because they confuse him.
Yes.
He knows what his father wants from him, which is very difficult, and his mother says that he should do that too, but he can tell that her heart isn't in it.
Yes.
Which probably Sarek can't.
He doesn't notice, yes, but because he understands the emotional side of his mother better. And old Spock explains that really well, because he said...
She is a human woman with strong emotion and sensitivities. She embarrasses you with those traits.
I can understand how a kid gets embarrassed by their parents' actions or words.
Yep.
And you are afraid when you see them in yourself.
Like the young Spock asks, like, how do you understand me so well? And he's like, well, there's some human blood in my family as well. It's not fatal.
It's such a good line.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you whether are we going to take a diversion to listen to something, or are we going to edit it in and then you don't get to hear it right now?
Okay. Yeah, let's sort of throw it in. That sounds like fun.
So what I'm proposing, and we knew that this was going to be a long recording because the episode was so short.
Yes.
Is we listened to a recording from the B-side of the Star Trek The Motion Picture soundtrack album, which contains some totally bonkers like monologues and interviews with the crew, and an interview between Gene Roddenberry and Sarek in character.
Okay.
As if they met one another.
Who's interviewing whom?
Gene Roddenberry is interviewing Sarek of Vulcan.
Okay. Yep.
Shall we listen to that now?
Yeah.
I love that sound. It's about 7 minutes.
Welcome, Ambassador Sarek.
My old friend Roddenberry. It's been years since we met.
And I have many new questions, Ambassador. Much more intimate and personal than I've ever had to ask before.
Ooh. About my son Spock, I presume.
Well, yes, if you include the beginnings of Spock. There are some things I must know, Ambassador, in order to continue my Star Trek journals. Forgive me, but how were you able to overcome the Vulcan Pon-farr mating drive? I presume you did overcome it, since Spock's mother, Amanda, was human, and somehow alive. She was impregnated by you.
Roddenberry, are you asking if we couple?
Yes, sir.
Clearly.
We know that Vulcans normally mate only once every 7 years.
And since it is known that we pay for our sexual repressions during these years by an almost animal madness, this has aroused a prurient curiosity among humans.
It comes out of our affection for your son Spock, Ambassador.
I assume this was
and your son's future.
Scripted.
He's half human. Yeah. We've seen him reject a Vulcan marriage. Is marriage to a human female possible to him?
It was for me.
But if you take the madness which happens to your people at the time of Pon-farr, then add to it the extraordinary strength of a Vulcan.
Ordinarily, an Earth woman could not enjoy that.
Hey.
If she survived, she might be severely injured, both physically and emotionally.
Whoa.
Regarding that...
Roddenberry, I will not paint a word picture.
Yeah.
I will say that humans and Vulcans mate in somewhat similar fashion. In quite similar fashion.
Pon-farr and R.
But physical
Vorek did go after
mass,
B'Elanna.
Duration and energy do vary.
Mass duration and energy.
We are deprived of our reason during this time. The rest depends upon the woman. Not just her strength, but also her wisdom, her patience.
Is it possible to ever completely overcome the Pon-farr madness?
It is probably impossible to a Vulcan in his youthful prime. Fortunately, I was not. And it was no doubt helped by the fact that I'd spent almost 30 years as ambassador to other Federation planets.
And you spent many of those years on Earth itself.
Yes. But this gives too much credit to me. Spock's mother, Amanda, is an extraordinary woman.
And Spock was the result. The first human-Vulcan mixture.
No, not the first. But the first to survive. As you must know, an Earth-Vulcan
human blood is fatal.
Will abort during the end of the first month. The fetus is unable to continue life once it begins to develop its primary organs. The fetus Spock was removed from Amanda's body at this time. First such experiment ever attempted. His tiny form resided in a test tube for the following 2 Earth months, while our physicians performed delicate chemical engineering, introducing over 100 subtle changes we hoped would sustain life. At the end of this time, the fetus was returned to Amanda's womb. At the 9th Earth month, the tiny form was again removed from Amanda, prematurely by Vulcan standards, and spent the following 4 months of Vulcan term pregnancy in a specially designed incubator. The infant Spock proved surprisingly resilient. There seemed to be something about the Earth-Vulcan mixture which created in that tiny body a fierce determination to survive.
And as Spock grew into childhood, Ambassador.
Yes. There must have been times when his inner mind wondered if the fight to survive had been worthwhile. You see, while all Vulcans, including our children, live by the code of Idik and believe that diversity is to be admired and treasured,
infinite diversity and infinite
it
combinations.
must be understood that the display of emotion is considered on our planet to be grossly offensive.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. No, more than that. Shockingly indecent.
Yeah.
I can only explain that our attitude is rooted in Vulcan history, involving events of such bloody violence that it has left our race forever scarred and sensitive to displays of emotion. Whether or not this Vulcan attitude can be defended, the fact is, it exists.
Young Spock was allowed no smiles, no tears, no anger.
Such emotions, so common among your school children, are shocking, even appalling to a Vulcan child. Spock's playmates could only assume that the bearer of these emotions was exhibiting hatred for his fellows. Some desire to embarrass, to disgust them. The children were prepared to enjoy Spock's diversity. They were not prepared for my son's demonstrating what seemed to be an obscenity of the grossest kind.
Right?
It must have been a cruel existence for Spock.
It was.
Then, what kept your family on Vulcan?
We felt Spock's torture, of course. But Amanda and I also had a dream. One that justified even the risk of our precious son's life and sanity.
Wow.
What point
Can't wait to
is
hear
there
that
in
one.
any life surviving unless it has meaning? The meaning of Spock's existence was the very meaning of our marriage.
Yeah.
Could our two life forms combine and offer something of value to other life forms?
Okay.
Idik.
Yes.
And clearly
Infinite
could,
diversity.
but he couldn't appreciate it.
Of infinite combinations. It has given us quite a lovely universe.
Oh, I like that line.
I will return to Vulcan now. if I may.
Thank you, Ambassador. Engage transporter.
Okay, so it is canonical that you can transport from Earth to Vulcan. I mean, this is this is a point that I've been bitching about many times.
He had like a shuttle in orbit. He's
so it's not possible. Thank you.
Vulcan Express. What? No. It's not canonically possible to beam from Earth to Vulcan.
Isn't that what happens in the J.J. Abrams movie?
Yes, with a special transwarp beaming device that was invented.
So it is possible.
Well, yes, but not with technology known to exist.
And then we stop using it forever because,
it was classified and seized by Section 31, and that classified prototype was stolen by John Harrison.
Right.
It is a unique device and a unique piece of science.
Yeah, and therefore we shall never use it and investigate it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's way too convenient. Yes.
Hey, the Bell Corporation had invented magnetic tape storage decades before it came into use. It was invented for an answering machine. Now, how do you do an answering machine? Well, you have to invent magnetic tape storage because it's reusable.
Sure.
A fantastic innovation, but then it was felt that an answering machine would cut into the revenue of calling back, and conversations were more profitable than listening to a message on an answer phone. So that technology and that patent was shelved, and magnetic tape for audio storage wouldn't emerge for decades.
Okay, wow.
So
they got that wrong because later on they decided that we're going to cue you to voicemail much quicker because then we can charge people twice. Once for recording the message and for the other person for listening to it. But
this excerpt I've always had in mind and really explained it to me. What we see here. To a Vulcan, emotional explain, a smile is like burping or farting.
Right.
A perfectly normal bodily thing.
But you don't do it in public.
Because we culturally don't do that in public because we show respect by restraining that.
Right.
And we show disrespect by not restraining it. And so smiling for a Vulcan child can only be interpreted as an act of disrespect. Why would someone choose not to conceal that expression?
Right. And old Spock explains that very clearly to young Spock here. It's just like
Vulcans do not lack emotion. It is only that ours is controlled.
Yeah. We restrain them, as the Kelvin universe Sarek would say.
The control of feelings, so that they do not control you.
Their conversation, so important to young Spock, is interrupted by the collapse of the fat old sailor.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Because he got clawed by the Lamatia, and the poison claw hit him, and yes, he is now dying.
And, well, clearly he is too fat to move.
Yeah,
there's a lot
moved.
of body shaming there.
Yeah.
So we can't bring him to the city to heal him. And then young Spock says,
I can bring a healer here.
something that he would later, like in many interviews, say, no, I know, I wish I'd said, I'd bring a healer here, which is what I should have said.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that while I was reading these lines out of context with nobody reading the reverse lines to me. And, like...
I don't get it.
So the actor who's playing young Spock, he was given this script, just these lines, and he read these lines and kind of made assumptions about what part of the script they were for. But so he misemphasized. He said,
I can bring a healer here.
Instead of, then I'll bring a healer here.
Oh, right.
That's the emphasis that's supposed to happen. That didn't happen in the recording, and they didn't invite him back.
So young Spock goes running off, and old Spock stays with his old beloved pet,
Chaya,
who is now dying.
This did not happen before. My life decision was made without the sacrifice of yours, old friend.
Spock even offered to go run and find, or old Spock, I should say. Gosh, this is confusing.
Yes.
But young Spock says, no, he's my pet, and it's my responsibility.
Yeah, and can you stay here to keep him comfort?
And he runs through this terribly dangerous desert, represented by this tentacle
plant thing, which it kind of looks a bit like a cheap version of the Sarek pit.
Yeah,
and which is like it's great. It's quite a long shot where young Spock is running across the Vulcan desert, and we get the shot of these tentacle plants, and and then and Spock again, and then he comes running over the hill, gets grabbed. And immediately shrugs it off and keeps running. Yeah. it's like way too big a setup for way too small a payoff of dramatic.
Such is animation, man. It's a 25-minute episode, but it does, like, it conveys he's going through this ordeal, all of these dangers, with incredible efficiency, because he has a mission in his heart. Mm-hmm. Ooh, he has an emotion that overrides all others. And that's, love and fear of losing someone he loves. So fear for himself just doesn't have a place in his mind.
Good point, yeah.
Right, you can be so much braver when you're comforting someone who needs your protection than you'd be on your own.
He rings the doorbell, Fu Manchu opens.
Yeah, Ming the Merciless, in a lovely green uniform, does it, and it's such a recognizable scene. But it's all coated in Vulcan. Like, he's just running up to the town doctor. The Dr. Quinn, medicine woman.
Yes. And he's like, oh, my pet needs help. And he's like...
I have heard of a tendency toward what humans call practical jokes.
What is this thing you call pranks? Shenanigans, even?
And he says, bitch, that was one time 2 years ago. Drop it, okay?
Like, have you ever heard that the son of Sarek is a liar? It's like, ooh.
No, I haven't heard that. I'll get my medicines. Whoa, what an amazing own.
Yes, they show up.
In the pink Jetsons mobile. Like, thank you. Much like your electric skateboard.
Yes, which also does not make those sounds, except when you're around.
Thank you for making that sound for me. I do insist on it. We live in the Jetsons future. We need to have the sound. It lands, the healer gets to work. He's got a little yarmulke on. He's such an interesting appearance, by the way. Just, he's got a white beard, which is not something that we've seen on Vulcan, and he's got a bald head.
Yeah.
A fantastic look.
Unfortunately, though, the old saber bear is too far gone.
Yeah, this is the conversation that young and old Spock are having. Spock is terribly worried about his pet and worried about him dying. And old Spock is able to give him some wisdom there that...
Loss of life is to be mourned, but only if the life was wasted. Chaya's was not.
Which is an interesting take on mourning, but...
Yeah, also not the most healthy, I don't
Again,
think.
like I think we've pretty much established that Vulcans are not very good in that regard. You know,
they have a lot to learn from.
They have issues.
Worf.
Let's call it like that. No, not issues. Subscriptions.
Oh, very good. And the healer reports, much to his regret,
it has been too long. No antidote known will save his life.
And young Spock makes the decision to euthanize his beloved pet at 10:20 22 on a Saturday morning with a whole generation of American children watching.
Well,
and it rules. It rules. Like this established, not only can we tell like stories in animation that are on par with Star Trek that we knew, we can do this for an even broader audience because children were watching Star Trek.
Yeah,
they were staying up late when they could. I think several Star Trek actors have talked about that they snuck in. Oh, one of them was Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, yes.
Who tells the story that as a young girl watching television, like she saw Star Trek and then she saw Uhura appear. And I've memorized this quote. She immediately ran away from the television, ran through her entire house for all of her relatives. Come quick, there's a black lady on television and she ain't no maid.
Yeah.
And so this this is really incredible. Euthanasia, the cessation of suffering for someone who's beloved, and for that decision to be made by a child. Yeah, Old Yeller.
I think it was you who actually mentioned that in the past that pets are a good way in a family, especially with children, to practice grief. Pets die, and grandparents die, and parents will die eventually, and it's a good way to get children to get accustomed to the fact that things change, people die.
Yeah, I was paraphrasing someone, I don't know, but the short life of most pet animals is a gift that they can give to children to help them learn to process grief, and that there is more life after death. And it's always incredibly sad, but it's only sad. It's not a horror.
No, that's true.
And this experience, choking up here a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, young Spock discovers that even in the midst of this emotion, he can make a rational decision. And like the line that he says,
"It is fitting he dies with peace and dignity."
And that's an amazing realization for a young person to come to. And like, this is what convinces him that he's now capable of doing that test.
He apologizes to Sarek for having troubled him, but it was necessary.
Yeah, with full confidence.
"I regret having troubled you in any way, but it was necessary."
I'm sorry if you were offended.
Yes.
Non-apology.
Best non-apology ever.
Because he isn't really apologizing. He's just like, I regret that you were sad, but it was necessary.
Yeah. The decision had to be made.
Yeah.
And I chose Vulcan. Dramatic shot of Amanda.
Yeah. And she briefly closes her eyes.
Yeah.
And
she goes, I was afraid of that. But
it's amazing. Like, it's heartbreaking. Like, this woman, like, in that moment, she sees, now my child is moving away from me.
Yeah. Good point, yeah.
And the relationship that in my heart I would love to have with my child, I now can't have because I have to have a Vulcan relationship.
Yeah.
And I have to show him my love in a Vulcan way. And I'm just not going to have that. And then she slinks away and she goes to she knocks on Michael's room and says, "Hey, you want to hang out or something?
Can we talk about
You want to play some catch? I've got some shit to talk about." "Oh yeah, sure, no problem, Mom," she says, listening to the Hamilton soundtrack, which is recovered from and they have a sing-song together and woo!
Spock says
"If you will excuse me now, I have some business to conduct with schoolmates."
Business?
"A demonstration of the Vulcan neck pinch."
Yes, demonstration of. So he sounds like he's literally saying, "Yeah, I'm going to beat up my school."
I'm going to neck pinch all of them, and all of them, and then write on their faces with my calligraphy pen. You'll be so proud of my penmanship.
I'm going to draw. Sorry, I'm going to draw some big cocks on their faces.
I'm just going to draw pon fart all over them. Yeah, no, I found your magazines, Dad.
Oh, wow.
And everyone's cool with it. Sarek's cool with it. Old Spock's cool with it. Yeah, well, that's just what kids do.
Yeah. Oh, crikey.
Maybe that's why after this, the school uniforms are changed. Yeah. And, like, all the skin from, like, ankles to chin has to be covered because that's where he drew all of his porn graffiti on all of the assholes who bullied him.
Just tattooed it on them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, you were supposed to use the erasable ink. Oh, was I? Oh, an error was made. I regret any distress you felt.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, sorry, my jaws are hurting now. It's like...
No. And old Spock says, "Anyway, bye."
Yeah, thanks for your hospitality, Toodles.
Come back anytime.
I won't.
No, I don't. No, probably not. I think I shall not.
Yeah.
No. Cool, well, bye. And through a process we don't get to see,
Again, yes.
The traveler is returning.
Kirk is waiting for him.
The traveler is returning.
And he says, Scott, beam. Because he just gets shorter and shorter.
Right.
Beam now.
Two to beam up. At least he says that. He says two to beam up at this point.
And as they materialize on the transporter pad of the Starship Enterprise, the extremely pallid Bones is there waiting, and everybody's sort of holding their breath. Okay, are we going to recognize him?
What is he going to say? Yes. And he's just like, yes, crew physicals, and he does a little bit of bitching about having to reconfigure for a Vulcan.
Oh, well, you might have had to reconfigure for an Andorian. I think it was a good line.
I know, but it's like...
It's one of the, you're right. They always have to end on a little gag, but it's actually quite an Andorian.
I mean, they kind of lampshade that at this point, because, like, Bones actually says, like...
If that was supposed to be a joke, Spock, I have to remind you, Vulcans don't tell jokes.
And then he says...
Times change, Doctor. Times change.
And it's such a good line. It's a good joke, and it's... Oh... Do you want to do that segment that we keep forgetting about? Who's your MVP? Who's like the most valuable player in this episode? And it can be anyone. It can be artists. It can be sort of set design.
Yes. Well, there's not a lot of that. I mean, there's the...
I love Shakar City.
Oh, yes. I mean, I like Sarek's Vulcan home more. But...
Yeah, it's the home of Sarek of Vulcan on Vulcan, in
yes.
Vulcan, yeah.
In
Your
Vulcan
dog.
City. I think...
I mean, it can be Aichea.
Ooh, I mean, very
adorable.
important, yes.
Based on Dorothy Fontana's cat, Bobby McGee.
Oh.
In terms of his oldness and fatness.
Me and Bobby McGee. For battlers in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train.
I think she was even quoting somebody else when she said, "Oh, and he's so well behaved. At my merest instruction, he'll do whatever the he pleases."
Very good. Yes. That sounds like a cat, all right. I think Amanda.
Oh, Amanda's a really good
I think
choice.
she is.
Yeah.
And she always is. Like, you know, she's always there as the...
well, I mean, we know her from the modern era of Star Trek.
Yeah.
In the J.J. Abrams films and in Discovery, and especially on Strange New Worlds, but she gets so much to do. But this was the 70s.
No, true. But I like
before.
her. Yeah, she does a good job. She's like, and you can see the pain in her when Spock decides to go over his Vulcan ways, and she goes, "Oh, losing him to this thing as well." But apparently, it's something she can deal with because she's still sticking around with Sarek.
Yes.
So that's. I'd have to say Amanda is my MVP.
Oh, I love that. That's a really good choice. Mine is going to be Dorothy Fontana.
Yeah.
The writer of the episode. She wrote an amazing piece of fiction, accessible to a younger audience. The creative decisions that she made and the amount of attention and time that is given to various points is perfect. Almost nothing to the exposition about time travel, just the bold choice of saying, it's just a thing that we do, and then just deal with the consequences for canon.
It's a time travel story that doesn't really involve time travel. It's just,
And the like, Themin, the Andorian first officer,
yes, yeah.
only appears for a few moments, but he has a whole character arc, which is, very, very well defined. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Dorothy. Maybe I need to give it to, like, sad Ensign Jimmy with his sad eyebrows on the little screen, like he's so sad.
O'Brien's father.
Your great-great-granddaddy.
No, not great. I mean,
would it? No, come on. This is 2267. He's in his 30s, and in 2270, Briano is in his 30s or 40s.
No, okay, right. Because I think Scotty was canonically in the transporter buffer for 70 years or something.
Thereabouts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When he comes out in...
I always forget that there's more time between those two, the original series and the Next Generation than...
Oh, it helps. The first episodes are about a century apart.
Right.
Next Generation and the original series. So what about... Oh, let's see if this sound effect works now.
Captain's log, supplemental.
Yeah, so what scenes do you believe were filmed and then dropped?
Well, there was the obviously ass-kicking that Spock gives his classmates.
Yes.
Neck pinch. Pentac jab.
I had that written down. Farscape reference, bro.
But no, I think it's going to be the bit when Spock asks for his equipment. He wants the Vulcan still suit and the... and the boots and everything else, and he wanted a sports almanac for Vulcan for
Sick Back to the Future 2 reference, bro. I've got to find a new phrase to do this whenever you do it. Because as time goes on, more and more of people that we know and know us come from eras vastly different than ours. And
Oh, very good, yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay. Yours?
Mine is probably like the 4-season Time Wars arc.
Okay.
Of various agents from the 26th through 27th century who've been fighting over the Guardian of Forever and like killing entire civilizations and erasing themselves from history, battling it out until like finally a compromise was reached, which was that we will permit this time travel machine to operate for 3 occurrences, 2 of which have happened during Star Trek, and then there's one more that maybe we'll find out someday, that will be allowed to canonically exist in the time stream, and we won't. Okay, that's fine. It's like a bit of a few little circles on the map that we all agree nobody owns those.
Okay. So not the entire spin-off series where there's a time war being fought over by various departments, one of them who tries to kill Achaya and the other one who tries to save him. And like,
no, there's definitely like major sects of pro and con Achaya apologists who like, oh God, the spawn of Achaya, he was a genetic progenitor to an entire sentient race. But they would gladly give up their culture.
An entire Traveler-style series about how this is...
Voyagers, that's it. They arrive here and they decide.
Yeah.
Times change, Doctor.
Yeah.
Times change.
Okay, well, what do we have for next week?
Okay, as always, we get a little glimpse of the future from our chief in the time vortex. And Chief, despite what you wrote in the script, I didn't forget about you.
Oh.
It's really good to hear, Kaki. I am so sorry about your childhood pet. That was a mistake in the time vortex. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And we've got some quotes from the next episode that we're going to have to guess. So here comes the first quote.
Assassination plots against me are one thing, but sabotage...
Oh. He doesn't even say who says it.
No. Interesting.
Assassination plots are one thing. Oh, only because I've said Bride of Chaotica. Is it something with Dr. Chaotica from Voyager?
Oh, I have no idea who that is.
Okay. Wait, what? Sorry, what? Do you know?
I've not seen all of Voyager, remember?
You don't know who Dr. Chaotica is?
Exactly. I do not know who Dr. Chaotica is.
Okay, that makes this even more... Let's find out.
I've been an outpost scientist. Why is there a room between 2 holodecks?
Okay, this is definitely Lower Decks.
Okay.
Listen to this. Okay, listen to these 3.
Assassination plots against me are one thing, but sabotage...
Oh, yes.
Should have been an outpost scientist.
Should have been...
Why is there a room between 2 holodecks?
Okay, next one.
How does something drink bones?
Okay.
Yes, you know what it is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And Mark Nixon, who's listening right now, is sitting out straight. And,
okay.
And the whole...
Oopsie.
Oopsie.
Do you want to hear that again?
It is.
Yeah.
Moopsie.
And Mark Nixon's whole Star Trek Adventures group is yelling into their headphones over the word moopsie because...
The episode is Lower Decks, Season 4, Episode 2, I Have No Bones, Yet I Must Flee.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Oh my God, another animated episode. And veering away from our attempt to do the mediocre ones.
Yes.
Sometimes we just got to do something awesome. And apparently we're doing 2 in a row. But in the meantime...
The hell is this?
I'm leaving Starfleet.
Energize!
We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode with your friends Kay and Kaki, production and editing by Chief Engineer Greg, and music by Fox Amore. Join us next time for I Have No Bones, Yet I Must Flee from Lower Decks, Season 4, Episode 2. Visit joyoftrek.com/links to send us your recommendations, support us on Patreon, or to find us on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to The Joy of Trek, and we'll see you out there.